Hi everyone, I'm going to show you how I travel around the city and outside of the city to paint plein air. So everything fits in my backpack, it's really lightweight, and so I'm going to just start unpacking. I have my brushes, an umbrella, attachable easel, portable tripod, fits, it's really lightweight and it folds really small. A jar to clean your brushes, hat, rags, and just a little plastic bag. Whatever your surface is going to be, we're going to talk about all these right after I set up. I have this attachable wooden easel that my wife Carrie Carino made for me. She designed it. It is really lightweight, it's easy to transport, and it folds perfectly flat. So you can paint this small, or you can bring this all the way up, and then that can be, you can detach this and put it down here. This is the palette I have. It's made out of a cigar box, and I had to sand it and apply a couple of coats of shellac so that the wood sealed. And the more you paint the seal, the better it gets, the surface. But so I set up my colors in one side, and I have all this surface to mix my paints, and I just open a hole for my thumb, because most of the time I'm standing back and forth and I just looking at my palette, making decisions and going to paint, and I can, like, you know, if I'm receiving too much glare, I can just move it easily. So most of the time I'm holding my palette. I know it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but you can also have the if you purchase a palette that has hooks right here, you can also have your palette attached to your tripod, or find a way that you can just put it on very close to your panel, so you can just like paint in here, have your brushes in your hand. I really like this because it's a palette that you can close quickly and just walk around again and find another spot, and don't have to clean the palette to put it back in your backpack. So it's a good idea to maybe invest in the long term in an umbrella. This is called Buitrago, and it has a Manfrotto arm that you can clamp on your easel or on your tripod if you're bringing a tripod. The only downside of this is that this part is heavy, but it's really sturdy. So I'm going to show you usually how I would set up my umbrella. Obviously make sure it's not too windy. If it's too windy, you can't use the umbrella. So the umbrella is useful as well because painting under the sun, I mean, for you is bad, also for your painting. You don't want the sun to hit directly on the painting, because your values are going to look too bright and you're going to start painting too dark to compensate the brightness that you see in your painting. So once you bring your painting at home, you realize that you paint too dark. So that's one of the problems of painting plein air, is that. So try to set up the best. If you don't bring an umbrella, move the face away from the sun. If you bring an umbrella, that's great. So this can go really high, but I'm gonna set it up short just to show you. So that clamps here. You can bring this a little bit higher. So it goes really high with the other pole. You can move this 360 degrees. When I go out and paint with this, I set it up higher. And if it's too windy, I just try to put it a little bit lower. And you know, if it's way too windy, it's better not to use it because it can pick up your whole easel. Let's talk about other options of equipment that you can use when you paint plein air. So for many years, I just had I made my own poche box out of a cigar box, and you know, I could either go outside and sit on a bench and put this on my lap and paint just a couple of hours like that. It's good for small sketches. So this was actually really affordable, and it was how I learned how to paint outside. Now, how do you put your panel here? Let's say if I'm painting with this small, it's just super easy to just have it there. You can have some push pins in one corner, and that's how it stays. You can also have some glue tag on the back of your panel. I'm going to show you another poche box I made, a little bit bigger. It's basically the same concept as the small one. This is made with another cigar factory from New Orleans, but what I did is I attach an universal tripod mount that it can be attached to a tripod, and I can also paint with that in my lap. And I took away the hinges that the box came with, and I attached these two hinges that allows the lid of the box to stay in the position that you want. And so when you paint, it doesn't close with the wind so this is what you need. And the link for the hinges and the link for the universal tripod mount is on the list of materials for this class. So you can find that on Amazon. They're very easy to find. But yeah, so the idea is the same. Plexiglass mounted on the box. You can store your stuff in here. You paint your plexiglass on the back with acrylic gray, number probably 7 or 6, and you're good to go. And then the way you put your paint in here, here's a sketch that I did on the park. This is a Dibond gesso panel. You can also use push pins, or you can use wooden tacks on the back, and that stays right there. You can paint out here. You can paint a little bit bigger as well. I have a bigger panel that goes larger than that, so I paint many sizes, and you know, this is actually really good. So that's a great option, and it's basically that. So the poche boxes is the original idea of the 18th and 19th century artists that went outside. The Hudson River School, they went out with their poche boxes. Sometimes they had wooden easels, or the French Barbizon School, they went out with their wooden easel as well, or the French Plein-Air easel. I find the French Plein-Air easel to be very heavy, so that's the one I definitely don't recommend taking outdoors, especially if you're walking and taking public transportation. You don't want a heavy wooden box with a bunch of legs around. If you're driving a car, I mean, that's totally fine. So there are other ways to, you know, other companies, they sell kind of like the same concept as the poche boxes. So there's the Strata and Edge Pro Gear and U-Box and all those. There are many more M boxes. I'm gonna just show you, I have this Strata. This is the small one. It's extremely heavy. For me, I mean, it's great if you're driving. I think it's really nice. It's a nice box. But if you're walking around, I might just want to leave my umbrella and my stool if I want to bring this box. It's just heavy. But I use it in the studio, and it's a great box to paint with. So it opens the same way. It has the same hinges that the lid stays in the same position. And this is actually really nice. It comes with these trays right here, so you can put And again, if you're driving, that's okay, it doesn't really matter. But if you're in the city and walking, or on a fellowship and just, you know, you might want to hike and try to see go for a good spot, this is definitely heavy. It's cool that it comes with trays, and you can just put your brushes here and your mediums. The size for the palette is a little bit small. That's my opinion. So that's the downside of these too. You can put a plexiglass here and paint, or you know, but you can paint pretty big as well. That goes up to here. That's how big you can paint, and it comes down. And you can also attach this to a tripod. It is small, it's just a bit heavy. And the Hugo and the M box and the Edge Pro gear, I think they all look great, just like this one. They're good tools. This one attaches to the tripod, but they're just a little bit heavier for me. And so that's the only thing. But well, they're great. So there's so many options out there for you to buy, or you can start making your own setup. If you find that it's easier for you and a little bit better to work with an easel, I recommend Carrie's easel. Is really portable and it's not heavy at all, and you feel like you're kind of like working the same. Like kind of like with the same sensation as you work in the studio when you paint the model. So for me, that's what I was looking for. So it's definitely a good choice. Okay, so now let's talk about my palette, the setup of the palette, the colors, the brushes, and some of the support. Okay. So I usually have one white, that's titanium white. I don't use lead white outside. I use only lead white for portraits and figure, but titanium white is pretty good for plein air painting and painting landscapes. Then I have my yellows, and so I usually have a dark yellow, a middle tone yellow, and a light yellow. Or sometimes if I don't have enough space, then I have only two yellows, a dark and a light, and I make sure that there's also a cool and a warm in each hue. So for example, for my yellows, I have cut yellow light, and that's lighter and cool, and I have yellow ochre, which is a little bit darker and it's also warmer. So I have a warmer and a cool, a darker and a lighter. And if I have a little bit more space in my palette, I might have Naples yellow or sometimes lead tin yellow light, but I feel like I can do a lot with this light yellow and the yellow ochre. Now I have Romber right next to the yellow because Romber is a low chroma yellow, and so it belongs to the yellow hue. So that would be my darker yellow and my less chromatic yellow. It is also the color that I use for blocking in the shapes before I start painting with color. A bright red can be vermilion, naphtol, bright red, or cat red. So all those, cat red light, all those are the same. They're lighter and they're a little bit cool than, for example, English red, Terra Rosa, Venetian red. Those are warmer and just a bit darker. So you want to have one of the light one and cool, and one of the dark and warm. So after the reds, we have the purples, or in this case, I have alizarin crimson. After that, your blues. So my lightest blue and cool is cerulean blue. My neutral blue is cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is the one that I use, I think, the most. And your dark and warmer blue between these three is the ultramarine blue. So yeah, those three blues and then these three yellows can give you a lot of green variation. So you can have so many notes and tones of green and not actually really buying too many tubes of green and put it in your palette. If you do this, if you make your own neutrals, you make your own greens as well, I think your painting, it will look a little bit more harmonized with working with your colors. And then one of the last colors I have here is black, or sometimes Van Dyke brown. So black is a low chroma blue. It's a really good color to neutralize other colors. If you want to make some value a little bit darker, that's a good choice, and it stays a little bit blue. Van Dyke brown is black with raw umber or with something warm. So if you want to neutralize a color but don't go too much towards the blue, a Van Dyke brown is a good option. But one of those, you don't need to have two. So there's not that many colors. If I've go out with less than these. I've go out with only one yellow, one red, and one blue, and you can have so many variations. All right, let's talk about brushes. I'm not too particular about brand of brushes or how many you can actually take outside. I think you should have at least a couple of bristle brushes for your initial block-in. I have some synthetic brushes that are really soft, and those are good for the layer after you lay out your first masses. So then after that, I have some flat synthetic brushes are good for the sky or for softening edges. I have some small round brushes, any size. You want to have a liner or a script brush. Those are really good for drawing specific shapes or maybe the branches of your trees. So definitely have a couple of these. If you have still space, you want to have some of these filbert brushes, synthetic filbert, and just one or two fan brushes, any size. Sometimes it's good for the grass or just to soften some edges. And a palette knife. So let's start with panels. These two are Dibond panels. So that's aluminum panels that I coated with gesso. So this is acrylic gesso, a couple of layers of acrylic gesso on Dibond. And the advantage of Dibond is that if it rains and you're outside and you get caught up by rain, it's not gonna warp. It doesn't absorb any water, so it's actually really good. And it's also very lightweight. This Plein-Air is made exactly on Dibond, as well as this interior painting. All right, here is another option of painting, and this is really lightweight. This is just cardboard, corrugated cardboard. And you also want to, since this is paper, you want to seal the pores of the paper with acrylic gesso. So the same way you seal this with acrylic gesso, you want to give the cardboard a couple of coats before you actually go out and paint. So this has, I think, one coat in the back and two coats in the front. And it's a great surface to paint. I love it, and it's really lightweight as well. And you can go out with a couple of linen sheets of, you can cut your linen different sizes, and just go out with a cardboard like this, and with your tape, just put the linen there. And also it's very lightweight. At the same time, you can also work on paper. Actually, oil on paper is very common. A lot of landscape painters, they do their sketches on paper. Not their finished paintings, but their sketches. And it's really lightweight as well. But you have to seal the paper, so you can use PVA size, or you can use shellac, and just a couple of coats of shellac will be okay to paint on watercolor paper. Okay, so when you're outside and you have your painting and it's wet, you need to, this is a very good way to transport your paintings, and don't really invest in heavy wet carrier boxes. So you want to put these corks in the corner like that, and that's okay because you don't paint any important things on the corner. That actually doesn't really matter. When you come home, you can retouch those corners, and that's fine. So you want to have another palette that is the same size, or you want to cut a piece of stiff cardboard on top the same size, right? So when you put that, let's say this painting is wet, so you're going to put the other painting the same size on top, and then tape the corners, or use some elastic in each one here, and this is really sturdy, and the idea is that the surfaces don't touch each other, right? And then just try to be careful carrying this. Just put it in another separate bag, maybe, and you just carry that in your hand. Just don't put this in the bottom of your backpack with all the heavy stuff, because it's gonna move, and you definitely don't want any surprises when you come home. So I'm here in the park and close to my house in Jersey City. And when we paint in parks, it's really, I think it's really hard to find a spot where we have the perfect scenery, like foreground, middle ground, deep space. You see a lot more interiors than open vistas, and that's why painting in parks and in urban areas is really, really tough. But it's not impossible, and sometimes you get a very interesting view. So I'm here. I've been walking around this park for, I think, a half hour. I am familiar with the area, so I know that I was going to come to this spot in the park, and I was going to see some water and some paths and a little bit of sky. And it's early spring, so right here I decided to set up in this spot because I feel like I can play around with from here to where this tree is. That could be my foreground, so I will avoid everything from the end of this path to where the camera is, because I'm gonna be standing up in here, so that would be too close to me. So when you're outside, you want to edit, pick and choose. You are presented with a lot of elements that not everything it's going to be beneficial for our composition. So I will suggest spend some time doing some little thumbnail sketches and walk around the area. Try to imagine what would be your foreground, middle ground, deep space. If you have deep space, if it's an interior, then sit down and see how much light can you get, how many trees, and what will be your interior space. But right now we have kind of like an open space right here. So I was thinking, okay, so this tree, I don't want to include all of those trees. So that would be my subject for my foreground. That means the ground that is really close. And then I have body of water right here with a little bit of reflection. The sun is coming from that side, so I'm mostly not looking exactly towards the sun, because you see the shadow over here. So I'll be seeing some light and shadow not just shapes. And so that from the water to this plane right here, that would be my middle ground. So all these trees that you see here, those are farther away, and I can incorporate those as middle distance. So it's good to have something in the foreground that is closer. You can paint a little bit more with more detail, and then a middle ground. And then you can see a little bit of this space over there. It's not perfect. We don't see mountains in the city. So if we, for example, we're in the Central Park, we probably will see a bunch of buildings. You can edit that. You don't have to paint that. But in this case, I have a little bit of the industrial city over there. That's the Pulaski Skyway in Jersey City over there. You can see that. I'm not sure if I'm going to include that, but I like the atmospheric perspective here. It looks blue, very far away. So I'm not sure yet how am I going to compose that in my 8x10 panel. So I'm going to start by doing some tiny thumbnail sketches in my notebook with pencil. So in these thumbnail sketches, you just really want to organize the composition a little bit. So for example, where would I include these two trees? How tall they will be? If I want them out of the composition, if I want them about, what will be, how tall they will be in the composition. And I don't have to be precise, but I can have like this shape, just the shape, the contour of the tree, of these two trees. I think I'm not going to include more than two for now. Maybe one that goes out that way, but we'll see. I'm not really sure about that. The plane of the foreground, do I want that straight that goes from here to here, or do I want some kind of inclination? That's really nice. I can also play around with the shadows a little bit in here, and then also include the middle ground plane right here, just a little bit, and some of the deep space as well. The middle ground has trees in here, so I can just try to play with the contour. Don't get too specific with the drawing. So if I can do this, that's more than enough. All right, a couple of notes on composition. The first thing you want to know about composition is identify your visible horizon and your true horizon. So in landscape, we have visible horizon and we have true horizon. And those two are important to know. So the visible horizon is the one that you see first. So for example, in this painting or in this composition that I'm about to paint, I have middle ground, foreground, middle ground, and I have a little bit of this space in the back, right? So my visible horizon it goes from here to that. Where the sky meets the land, that's the visible horizon. That's what you see, right? Now the true horizon is a little bit different. The true horizon is it's more where your line of vision is in relationship to the landscape. So it's sometimes what you can do to identify your true horizon is to put your brush or your pencil right on top of your nose, right in front of your eyes, and extend that. Don't lose extend that line over there. Where you see that line extending, that's your true horizon. So that's really important to identify in landscape, because sometimes the true horizon is being blocked by some trees or by a mountain. But if we identify exactly where is the true horizon, we can play around with the perspective. So let's see my true horizon. Actually, my true horizon is a little bit below my visible horizon, just below that, just a bit. It's almost like the same. But if I were going to sit down and draw from or paint from below, my true horizon will be somewhere around here. So I will be at this level, this eye level. So basically, your true horizon is the eye level, and the visible horizon is where the sky meets the ground. You need the visible horizon to compose. So sometimes you don't want to have the sky and the ground meeting right in the halfway, right? So if I were going to do this, I'll probably bring the visible horizon a little bit lower, so that this space is not the same as that. So I won't have like a half and half landscape. So I will bring this a little bit lower, or I'll bring it a little bit above the halfway, right? Sometimes it's a good idea to have a mental grid that divides your thumbnail sketch into half horizontal and half vertical. By doing this, it's pretty good, because by having that, you know exactly, okay, well, I'm gonna have my visible horizon here, and maybe I'll have my mountains around here. So all these will be ground and sky. So that already looks like you composing a picture. And maybe you would like to draw like a bunch of trees in here. So you have, by doing that, you can see how much sky you have, how much ground you have, and it's better than not having any idea before you paint. So one of the things you want to avoid when you want to compose your picture is try to avoid the true horizon, if you see it, or the visible horizon, to land right in the middle of the composition. So half and half is not a good idea. At the same time, if I'm gonna erase this really quickly, also try to avoid having very hard diagonals going towards the corners of your picture plane, because that will take the view of the picture away from the elements on your landscape. So if I will have, for example, this moment of right here, this diagonal that creates my foreground, instead of going right on the corner and finish right on the corner, so that it goes like, it kind of like unbalance my landscape, I'll finish, that's why I've kind of like finished, instead of on the corner, a little bit above the corner, so that I will avoid. Sometimes you want to cut corners. So for example, if I want to put an element right here that is a little bit of land or something, that's not, because it takes you out of the corner, takes you inside the painting, and right like towards the middle, or maybe the trees right here, and then there's something like a tall tree right here. So it kind of does this and goes to every single element. So avoid too many heavy diagonals going outside on the corner. Another good idea to look for composition is variety. So you want variety of elements in your painting. So basically avoid painting the same kind of like size everywhere. So if you have your foreground, middle ground, deep space, try to vary the proportions, the size of those. So I don't want to do like, that would be my foreground, that would be my middle ground, and my deep space, because this, that, and that, they're basically the same size. So it looks like a flag. So avoid that. That's not a good idea. So try to also avoid having, for example, if you have trees, all the trees to be the same size, you know. That's also something that you don't want to do in landscape. So in my palette I have a couple of colors. I'm going to start with raw umber, and I'm going to start painting the Blockin very loosely with raw umber and terpenoid. This is my solvent. I have a little bit of oil here. Actually, this is a solvent-free safflower alkyd that I'm using. It dries pretty fast because it's alkyd, but linseed oil will be fine. Your solvent can be Gamsol or lavender spike oil as well. So always remember to start lean. This evaporates very fast, so your first marks on your canvas shouldn't be with oil. It should be always with Gamsol or any solvent that you're using. Then once you're painting a little bit, you're painting the second layer or a little bit thickly, then you can use some oil or just nothing at all, just using the oil that comes with the paint already. I have titanium white, cat yellow light, yellow ochre, raw umber. This is vermilion. Vermilion hue is actually not the true one. Cadmium red and burnt sienna. This is alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, and Van Dyke brown or black if you have. So basically what I have is 3 yellows, 3 main reds, 1 red that can go to purple, 3 blues, lighter, middle, darker, lighter, middle, darker, lighter, middle, darker, cool, kind of like warm. So I have like cool, warms, cool, warm, and that's cool, that's neutral and warm. All right, so really loosely, I'm using terpenoid and raw umber. My panel is Centurion linen glue on a wood panel. So really simple. Just trying to organize the shapes, the bigger shapes that I drew in my little thumbnail composition. So that's exactly, you see, like if you have, I don't want this to be in the middle. Is that in the middle? Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, so I'll probably bring this closer to this, to the left. And I have something here that erases, so a dry brush can erase really easily if you're working on canvas. If you're working on paper, that will probably absorb very quickly, so there is less possibility to erase. But so here's some variety of shapes. So that's over here, that doesn't go to the corner, that goes up like that. My 2 trees are going to be around here, very close to the edge actually. So those are going to be around here. I'm thinking about how tall they are. I'm not going to take them out of the composition. Just they're probably going to be, one is going to finish here and the other one is going to be just a bit taller. But I don't want to make this too dark because I'll probably have to paint the sky. So just make a mark for those. If you see, it's early April, so I don't have a lot of foliage in the trees. If I will have that, I will try to make like just try to compose the contour, right? But I don't really have that much, so let's keep it like that. But then I have in the middle ground, so use your drawing skills that you have, that you learned before, because you can actually like use your brush, close one eye, and just compare sizes, like how big these trees on the middle will be in relationship to that tree. So I'm just gonna double check. So it would be 1, 2, it's almost like three times. So I will, obviously you have the option of, so I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller, because I don't want to go up that high on my composition. So there is some reflection here, so I'm trying to kind of like wipe out the reflection, the sky reflecting on the water, because all this foliage right here and the edge of the water of the ground here is reflecting also. But there's some moments that I can see the sky. Okay, now my middle ground, so it goes from this edge right here, so that's the edge that touched the water. I'm gonna make sure I have that drawing. So compose, go from general to specific. So now I can try to draw that a little bit more with more details. There's some tall grass in here that I want to include as well. And that's really nice also in this side. But I see some of the path and some of the green part over there. So it's a little bit, I can still see that. So that's gonna have some light, and that's gonna go like kind of like from here. If you have would like maybe a brush that is a little bit thinner. Let's see if I can do it with this one from here to here. And then in here it just cuts by this grass. Okay, so I'm not gonna make that too dark. Maybe I'll just give it a lightly tone, because the sun is illuminating that plane over there. Okay. Usually the flat plane of the grass, it's being illuminated by the sun more than the trees. The planes of the trees, the trees grows like that, upright. So it just, for example, let's think about this brush. It just gets light on one side, right? So it's an upright plane, just like this panel. But if I turn the panel like the way the grass is laying like that, it's receiving all the sun, so it's being illuminated more by the light. So that's why I'm seeing that grass lighter than, for example, this tree right here that has some foliage, and it's not like being illuminated that much. So if I squint, that's gonna be darker, that's gonna be lighter. There's some shadowing here, so that's fine. This part of the shore is in shade. Now again, this right here, this is flat plane of the grass. That's also getting light. Now this is closer to us. This is foreground. That's middle ground. So that means that this green over here is gonna be more chromatic. Not necessarily lighter. We'll see. I don't think so. I think it's a bit darker than that over there because of the atmospheric perspective. So things in the foreground are a little bit darker. But yes, receiving a lot of light. So I guess the green is going to be brighter and very, these are the shadows of those trees that are those trees are going to start around here, going all the way up. One here, the other one over here. All right, so something like this. Okay, so that's my rough start, and I'm going to go right away. I'm going to clean my brush, and what I'm going to do is paint the sky. In landscape, we want to start painting from back to front. So that means I'm going to start painting the sky, and then I'm going and paint the middle space or the deep space, and then coming until I am in the foreground. It is not a rule. I find it really easy to start with the sky, because nothing else is going to be lighter than the sky. So as I paint the sky and going from the sky to the front, I'm actually going from lighter to darker, and it's almost like I'm keeping my value range organized, and I'm not going from dark to light and just jumping around too much. Some people like to maybe key the sky and then have a little bit of the what in my landscape will be the darker part. So I will maybe try to go for that. So I'll key the sky, and I'll probably put a note here where this tree is, because I think that's going to be my darkest point. Everything in the middle ground is not going to be as dark as this. So here's some part of the trees in shadow, and that's darker than the shadows over here, right? Because of the atmospheric perspective, they look a little bit more blue and lighter. So key your light, key your dark, but go from back to front and get organized on that. And so for the sky, remember, the sky is your light outside in the landscape. So I'm using a little bit of white, cobalt blue, and I'm trying to go for. I'm using a lot of terpenoid, just enough so that we can paint thinly and let the first layer dry, because we need to paint this pretty much in 2 or 3 hours the most, because the light changes so much. So nothing is going to be lighter than the sky, so I'm going for that. Sometimes if the blue is too chromatic, by adding white and a little bit of Van Dyke brown, you are neutralizing or making the blue a little bit more gray. So sometimes you have a gray sky, a gray day, so it won't be this blue. Today is a nice, beautiful, very sunny day, so I have some of very kind of like these blues. This cobalt blue right here is not too deep, so I'm not going to use ultramarine blue in this case. Maybe a little bit of cerulean blue in some areas, and when it gets to the horizon, it'll get a little bit lighter. This layer of blue and solvent, blue, white, and solvent, it should be drying pretty fast, so we can come back and paint a little bit thicker on top of this first layer. So this is lean, we're painting pretty lean. So I'm gonna keep in mind, I don't want to make this too dark, because if I keep the sky too dark, everything else in the ground is going to be darker. So I'm going to be ending up with a pretty dark paint, and I'm not really painting an interior, so I see there's so much light out here. So I'm going to try to push my my top of the sky just a bit darker right here. That's too dark, so I'm just trying to incorporate a little bit more cobalt blue into my mix, maybe a little bit of ultramarine. So as I'm going, I'm actually gonna, let me just put this up so that I can paint the top of the sky. Just do that 1 sec. So I want to paint that top of the sky just a bit darker. Using a hat is really important when you're outside, because you don't want the sun in your eyes. So try to use something like a black hat or gray or something neutral color, so you don't see the color in your eyes either. And wearing black clothes or gray, or maybe a color that doesn't, you know, if the light is hitting on your chest, it won't bounce too much on the painting. You will have like a bright orange or something like that in your painting. So try to dress more neutral for painting outside. So I'm just trying to give the top of the sky just a darker moment, darker value. Because usually the top of the sky right here, it's above my head. That's a bit darker because it's closer. The sky that is meeting the ground right here, that's on the horizon. So that's definitely farther away from me, and that's gonna be lighter. So by just adding the top a bit darker, and this is the first layer, so don't worry about, you know, how neat and like smooth it's going to be. I don't think I want to go for that. But then the horizon is going to be just a bit lighter. So I'm just adding a little bit more white and just trying to get some lighter, trying to create that deep space. All right, so once I have the sky, I can start and painting the middle ground, and I'm going to be using the same bristle brushes for that. So I'm trying to use some. So my palette is going to be, my dip space is going to be. It's pretty far away. It's closer to the horizon, so it looks bluer, less chromatic, and lighter in value than the middle ground or the foreground. So I'm going to keep using blues because it's a little bit cool. It's a cool color as opposed to too many yellows and red. That doesn't mean that you won't find yellows and red in the deep space, but if you're using those yellows and red in the deep space, make sure you cool and you neutralize the chroma in those yellows and red. Maybe the temperature goes a little bit more towards the blue. Compare something in the foreground closer to you. Compare that to what you have in the deep space, in the color that you want to paint, so that you can find the difference, right? Also in value, compare how dark something is closer to you, like your jacket, or how light is. It's maybe it's a good idea to have like a black and white chips right here closer to you, so that you exactly know like how dark, how black that is, how dark in value that is in relationship to things that you see pretty far away. So you realize that they're not too dark or not too light, so they're probably much in the middle. So I'm going for the value. I'm thinking about value. So it's going to be closer to what I paint in the horizon. So I'm going to incorporate a lot of white and blue, and maybe a little bit of this ultramarine blue with a little bit of Van Dyke brown, because it's not exactly very blue. It has some kind of like, it looks kind of gray bluish, so it's less blue than the sky. It has a little bit of that gray. So that's probably a good note for what I'm gonna paint, and I'm gonna incorporate it here. And so I have blues and yellows. I don't really bring any greens when I paint landscape, so I make my own greens outside. And cobalt blue is a neutral blue. If we add this bright cat yellow light green, yellow cat yellow light, you are going to end up having a very chromatic green. Look at that. That is, I mean, compared to what I'm seeing, it's actually very dark and very chromatic. So I probably will need to add more yellow to bring it a little bit more towards the yellow, in case I want my grass to be more yellow than blue, and a little bit of white to lower the chroma, to bring it a little bit lighter. And if I want that to be a little bit darker, I just wipe off my brush and go back to the blue and just pull this green towards the blue now. So I have a lot of variety here already. I have a blue-green, darker blue-green, and that it goes from blue to yellow and lighter. Now I can also use, I'm gonna wipe off my brush, and I can, that's pretty nice for the grass, since it's pretty bright. Now I can use also the same blue or ultramarine blue, whatever, with yellow ochre. So yellow ochre is darker than cat yellow light, and it's also warmer. So that means, and ultramarine blue compared to cobalt blue is also warmer. You know, blues are cool, but if we compare three blues, so one blue next to the other one is going to look warmer than the other one. One's going to look cooler than the other. So there's a difference. Your ultramarine blue is the warm blue, cobalt blue is the neutral blue, cerulean blue is your cool blue. So you can see that this green that I'm making right here, that looks kind of like an olive green, and that it's a bit darker, yes. It's a little bit more blue. It's kind of like deeper, and that might be very good for the shadows that these trees are throwing me. I can use a little bit of the cobalt in here as well. It might be very good if I make it a little bit lighter. If I go and bring it a little bit lighter, it can be really good for the blues in the middle ground, because they're not going to be as chromatic as the yellows on the middle ground, as chromatic as these. Some of them. Yeah. So there's so many varieties you can do, and if you use cerulean blue, I'm gonna just grab that cerulean blue. It's a little bit stiff right here, and I'm just gonna make another. Let's put it here. And again, I can use this cat yellow light. But that's really, really chromatic, kind of like neon. So I don't think I can see this anywhere in this landscape. Not really today, so that green might not be that helpful. Maybe this and yellow ochre might be all right. Let's just check, so try to make, oh yeah, this is really nice for some. I can see this in the foreground. With a little bit of light of white, I can lower the chroma, and I can also use some reds and neutralize my green. So I could neutralize this a little bit with my with my red, because red and greens are totally opposite colors in the color wheel, and they neutralize each other. So I can definitely, it's already a lot more neutral. So if I mix it with white, that actually can allow me now to paint some parts maybe in the middle ground. So yeah, it's really good to have that. So I'm going to group this green that I just mixed. When you mix, I'm mixing now pretty much uncomfortable holding this. I usually hold my palette in my arm or just put it on the tripod. So it's easy to mix with the palette knife. So try to pre-mix right where you are, and I'm gonna just leave this here because you can just keep regrouping and have like piles of your colors. All right. Tall grass right here that is a little bit yellow, and it has like a golden color, and again the value is very close to that blue. It's almost like when I squint they all come together, and so if I want this to be in that plane, I have to keep the values close. I can't just make such a big jump between dark and light right away in the same plane. So I intend, let's talk a little bit about like how many days should I be painting this? Is this one day, or this could be 2 days. I could just come back another day and try to get as far as I can get today, and then come back a second day for more specificity. I can definitely do that, but I came out today with just the intention of painting on one very loose, kind of like a sketch demo. But it's not a bad idea to maybe set your goals and see like, okay, well, the first day, instead of starting your painting with a very loose blocking, maybe you can develop the blocking a little bit further and get some more drawing into and smaller shapes into the painting, and then come back the second day and then start painting in color, and then get as close as you can on the second day, and then on your third day just come back for finishing. So now the water is a reflection of the sky, but usually a little bit darker, just a bit, like a touch darker than the sky. So if I organize my painting in values, the sky is the lightest, then the water, then deep space. This is going to be some of the darker moments right here in the tree that I'm going to do. So the sky is really, the sky and the water are pretty close in value, basically. That's what I'm saying. So I think the light is hitting more this side, and then it's just a little bit more. There's a little bit more blues in this area. All right, so now I can start painting a little bit thicker. So it's the whole composition is there, it's all covered. This pretty much all lean, and it's gonna get dry soon. So I'm gonna wash my brushes and maybe move on to smaller brushes and synthetic that I can be more specific with the shape. So this is all done with bristle brushes. So just like get those big shapes soon and faster before the light changes. I do want to include the shadows right here. I'm going to do that. And then, you know, one of the last things I'm going to do is those trees. So come back from back to front, working everything. And at one point, I'll just throw the drawing of the trees right here. So using a little bit of medium, that's a little bit oily. Blue. You can see some clouds now. That's really nice. The brush that I'm using, it's synthetic and it's really soft now, so it doesn't like, it's not taking off the paint that is in the initial layer. The sky is, because of the perspective, it's a little bit flat on the horizon. You see the clouds laying flat as it goes more towards, you know, closer to your head. So on top of the composition, it's like a dome. The sky is almost like a dome. So you see a little bit more of diagonals in the clouds. So it doesn't matter if you paint up in here in many directions. But as you go down in here, you want to start laying your colors. And I'm including a little bit of yellow ochre to starting to warm that blue a little bit without making it too green. So I don't want to have green in the sky. But as I'm going to the horizon, I'm gonna try to lay that a little bit of my medium and terpenoid, so kind of like a half and half, and starting to lay that just more simple. All right, you can use thicker white, just a bit of your yellow to warm it up, and just sketch, just lightly sketch. If I see a cloud that I find super interesting that I want to include at this moment, I just really like that cloud, how that cloud kind of goes down here, has that kind of curve, and there's some more puffy clouds around here, so you can see a little bit of the top of those clouds. That's really I mean, it's warmer. You can see the difference between this blue going from dark to light and from kind of like cool and warm. So this is a very nice, it's not green, but it has some yellow. So try to get to that for the clouds, because the clouds, I mean, at this time of the day, and usually the horizon as well, it has a little bit of, it's not warm, but it has a little bit of that kind of a warm halo in the horizon. So using that. Okay. Let's see, there's a cloud that goes in this direction up. So as I starting to see, you see more diagonal, this coming that this way. the clouds on the horizon are perfectly flat. So now I can paint this. At the end of the painting, I think I'm gonna have just a couple of flat clouds closer to the horizon. That's what usually what happens. But for now, let's keep painting the ones that are on the top of the composition and closer to us. We can see the direction like that. Okay, maybe just a little bit here as well. All right, if you want to make edges a little bit softer, especially in the clouds, I mean, it's a good idea to have a softer brush to do this. I'm going to start making some of these grays that I create at the beginning for the deep space, but I'm going to apply them a little bit more thickly and more specific with this brush, maintaining always my value range in here. So it's very close to the sky, so I'm okay moving in, like kind of like mixing my same colors in the same pile. You know, the values are, again, they're closer here. I'm not really pushing anything too dark, although, yeah, this looks dark comparison to the sky. But it's not even that dark, because I'm still in the middle ground, and I know things are not gonna get too dark yet. One of the things that I want to also recommend to everyone painting outside is that, you know, right now, since it's a little bit late in the day, I mean, it's starting to get a little bit cold, and the wind's starting to pick up a little bit. So you want to dress in layers. Try to always have one layer that you can put on in case you get a little bit cold. And I'm going to just sketch the trunks So I think the light is changing a lot right now, and it's so beautiful, but it's already another painting, another composition, another light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back tomorrow, and I'm going to keep painting all these details and just bringing this more specific. So on day 2 of this painting, I'm just focusing on working a little bit more my foreground. So I'm trying to just get these branches a little bit more defined. Also pick and choose, because you really don't want to copy everything you're seeing outside. And there's this tree has a lot of branches and so much stuff, and I don't think I need everything here. Values are just starting to get a bit darker. So even the shade in this area on the middle ground is going to be lighter than this one because of the atmospheric perspective. Also, they look a bit warmer, although not as warm as some areas in the grass. So the trees, I'm still using some blues and yellow ochre. I'm going to show you my palette in a minute. And a little bit of red and umber to neutralize, and maybe to pull it a little bit less blue. For the branches up in here, they get thinner and lighter as well. I want to show you my palette. So I pre-mix some greens using for most of it yellow ochre, cobalt blue, and ultramarine blue for these greens right here. And so I'm making my branches with this neutral. So I neutralize and pull it down with a little bit of black, some yellow and white as it goes lighter around here. But this is very neutral, and a little bit of raw umber if I need to keep neutralizing a bit more. This green right here is made with cobalt blue and cat yellow light, and as you can see, just to remind yourself how neutral this is compared to this chroma. So this is going to be reserved for some parts in the grass, even less chromatic than this. I think this is way too much. I want to bring it lighter for the areas where the sun hits the grass on the middle ground as well. So keep, think about your spaces in landscape. Where are you right now? It's like, are you working the foreground? What are the characteristics of the foreground? How much chroma do you see in the foreground compared to the middle ground? I'm using a liner brush for this drawing. And then so I don't want the whole thing to be just like little branches everywhere. And maybe less is more, honestly, because sometimes I feel like I put too much and I just don't know. Maybe it was simple, it was a little bit better. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just adding some of these moments here around the branches that indicate the beginning of what will be the leaves of the trees later. So again, I don't want to be too specific with this, but they are forming a shape. So if maybe I want to think about the shapes that's making, almost like if they were leaves, I will try to make a shape instead of painting just a single leaf, right? It's almost like the same way you will approach a tree with full leaves, like very full and green, like in the summer, June and July. You have to squint and try to approach it from the shape mindset. So you want to paint the shape as opposed to want to paint like a single little leaves, because you don't want the painting to be so literal and you want your shapes to be nice and interesting. So sometimes you go out and you just find a composition that is really simple and there's not a lot of drawing involved, and there's more like bigger shapes, and that's great, that's amazing. And sometimes it takes a little bit more time, and what you're looking or where you are painting requires more drawing. So with this tree, I think if the trees were full, I will probably be able to simplify these and use a larger shape for making the masses, as opposed to these little touches like that. So every single painting is a little bit different. So the water doesn't, the reflection on waters, if it's windy like today, you won't see it as a mirror, as a super calm, and then see all the reflection. Actually, I'm not seeing that much reflection of these trees in here. Definitely not in here. Closer, I'm seeing the reflection of these moments, these trees right here. Here's some my palette. Yellow ochre, white on top of that green can give me a really neutral orange that it serves pretty well for this grass over here, which I'm seeing on right behind the painting. So I'm trying to kind of like take from that grass over there and incorporate it in my painting in this side. So all of this grass, all that tree over there, that's that, and that's that tree, is that tree. So I'm just taking elements and then bring it closer to my composition. I'm just trying to pick and choose what I want and what I want to incorporate. These bigger trees, I really didn't want that bunch of trees to be in the middle of the composition, so I kind of like simplify that a lot, and I really want to just come back to the foreground, because I mean right now this is all pretty much done, and I want to focus on the water now and the foreground. Foreground needs some elements, a little bit more paint. It's just too thin, so let's focus on that. Let's just go ahead and paint that foreground. So here we go, mixing some of my greens on the foreground. I'm gonna start with this yellow, and I know that's gonna go lighter, and some of these blues and more yellow to have my really chromatic grassy patch of green that I think is receiving a lot of light. So that, for example. And I want to apply it also a little bit more thick and with more a little bit thicker, and also with some texture as well. And maybe a couple of bigger brushes. So, you know, kind of keep adding variety to that green. I'm adding some white. I'm just gonna. This patch is receiving a lot of light, so I'm just gonna let that part of the grass get a lot of light. Start bringing some contrast. Remember, I mean, you don't want to paint everything very contrasting at the beginning. You want to kind of keep your values compressed. This is the same principle as we use when we paint figure. At the end, you can start bringing some contrast and highlights and little details. And so, yeah, a couple of things here in the grass. So for the sky, the same thing as I did for the water. Trying to add more medium. You see, like, this is really chromatic with mixing with white. So cobalt and ultramarine blue mixing with white, it gets lighter and less chromatic. And just a touch of black to neutralize that blue, because I feel that on the top, these areas right here are just gonna be a bit darker. So let's just start bringing that. I don't want to do too much in the sky, honestly. I'm okay with the sky. It's not. I like it. So it looks clean. It looks fresh. So I just don't want to ruin that simplicity. So I'm gonna apply it really thinly, and maybe at some point around here, it's just gonna get a little bit thicker, where I want my attention. Yeah, the clouds are not the same as the last time, but I find this very interesting, so I'm not gonna change them. But I'll push these corners just a bit darker. Now this is when you get the opportunity to get into your old drawing of the tree trunks and then the ramifications, and see if you can erase some areas if you want, like so I'm gonna take my softer brush and thin this out. Okay. And just softer edges. Same in here. I don't want that sharp edges on these trees. Okay. All right. All right, so I'm going to take care of this area right here on the foreground. And things that are closer to us, they're going to be warmer as well than the trees and the elements that are like deep in the deep space or closer to the horizon. Those are like a little bit more blue. So try to mix more blues and neutrals as it goes back as the elements recede in space and they get far away, and try to mix warmer colors, more reds and yellows, and keep them very warm as they come closer. So even though this green has a lot of blue and yellow, as it comes closer here, I'm going to start mixing some of my reds. Like a warm red would be great. So this is burnt sienna mixed with this green and a little bit of red if I need. And you know, just grab. It's just getting really dry now, and try to have some warm reds in your foreground as it's receding here. Obviously not gonna be just entirely red, but try to warm it up a little bit, maybe around here as well. Hey guys, so thank you for watching this demo. I hope you enjoyed the painting. I hope you get excited about going out and paint. And it has to be simple. 1 day sketch is good. 2 day composition, multi-day. It's also a lot of fun. But go out, have fun, enjoy your time outdoors.